The Guy Dawson Show is coming to you live from the World Center of Broadcast Media, WCOBM.com, and I just wanted to give you a heads up about a radio show that we do every Tuesday at 9 a.m. at KDWN 720 a.m. and KDWN.com. It is called PR Connections, the Business Edition, and that show is a platform where we talk about all aspects of business. We talk about marketing, public relations, political activism related to business, and I think that if you are an entrepreneur or someone who aspires to be in business, it'd be a great show for you to listen to. So if you get an opportunity, tune into PR Connections, the Business Edition, every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time at KDWN 720 a.m. or KDWN.com. Right before we went to the commercial break, I was telling you about a man who wrote and created a couple of really interesting documentaries, one of which is Who Will Stand, and the other is Women of War, and his name is Phil Valentine, and he's here to talk about his documentaries. And Phil, I just watched Women of War a few days ago, and it just blew me away. It was content that I was not very familiar with at all.
It's pretty shocking. Women of War is basically a documentary that addresses the issue of military sexual assault and military sexual trauma. Now that women are in combat and fighting on the front lines, the problem of sexual assault in the military is actually getting worse. But it doesn't just happen in theater, which is in combat. It really starts right from the get-go, from boot camp.
Right, and what shocked me about it was that, I've heard of things like Tailhook. It kind of brought it back. I had that level of familiarity with it, but as far as the amount of cases that have been reported and it being so prevalent in the military, it just was unbelievable to me that there was that much of the harassment happening.
Yeah, when we had done our research, the Department of Defense had admitted to 41% of women in the military are sexually harassed or assaulted. Normally, if the Department of Defense admits to a number, the actual number could be much higher. So we did our own research and found out that it was much, much higher. Of all the women that we had interviewed, and we had interviewed over 100, all but 2 of them had cases of sexual harassment, and more than 75% of them had been sexually assaulted. And that's pretty shocking. So it was my job not to bash the military, it was my job to find out why those numbers are so high. And that's what inspired the documentary.
And so little of it is reported. We're just talking the reported incidents.
And that's the same in the civilian world. About 80% of sexual assaults are not reported because of the women are afraid of the repercussions. And the repercussions are different. In the civilian world, they're afraid that maybe they'll lose their job if their boss is harassing them. But in the military, that's the same. They're afraid that they're going to lose their position, that they might get demoted or they'll get transferred. Women join the military for the same reasons that men do. They want to serve their country. So the fear of not being able to do that is the reason why so many of them are not reported. Then there's also the possibility that they're not going to be believed, and then they're going to be marked. And then as well as the fact that in most cases, the person that has assaulted them is a superior. So then they're afraid of, who are you going to believe? Are they going to believe me, or are they going to believe somebody of much higher rank?
Why isn't more being done about this?
Well, part of the problem of why it's happening is because it's sort of, I don't want to say it crept up. It's a problem that was unintentional, that the military is not exactly sure what to do about it and how to do something about it. And usually when I'm asked to give a 5-minute explanation of why it happens, for something this horrific to happen, it's very much like a plane crash. When you investigate a plane crash, you'll find out that it wasn't one thing that went wrong. It was 10 things that had to go wrong in a specific order. And in this incident, it's pretty much the same. And the way that I can explain it is the military, since its inception, has been designed to train men to fight. It was never designed to train men and women to fight together. So its basic construction is designed to train men to fight. And the way that they do that, and the civilian world can understand this a lot of times if you're a guy and you've played football in high school or college. The way that the military turns you into a fighting machine is that they have to break you down and then build you back up. And sometimes football teams do that. They break you down till you feel like you can't do anything, and then they build you back up slowly and you become this tremendous athlete. The military is pretty much the same way. But the way that they break you down is through intimidation and humiliation. And in the humiliation part, what they do is they refer to you in humiliating terms. In the military, they tend to be negative female terms. You've seen it in the movies and you've seen it on videos where they go, okay, come on, ladies. And that's a derogatory term. Now, when you do that on a regular basis, what you're teaching people slowly is that anything female is weak or inferior. Now, that in itself is not going to cause military sexual trauma. But when you do that in an environment like the military, where violence is taught to be an acceptable solution to a problem, now you're creating a cocktail for military sexual assault. So if these guys see the women in their units as weak or inferior, and violence is an acceptable solution to a problem, it's not the only solution. A lot of other things have to go wrong, but that's where the snowball begins to roll.
And what's the solution to this? Because like you said, inherently the military was not designed for men and women to be serving together. So how could you ever solve this problem?
Well, the first thing that you have to do is right from basic training, you can't use female terms for intimidation or humiliation. You have to start there, okay? The first women who were sent to Iraq as a fighting unit, and one is in the military called the Female Engagement Team, and if there's a sexual assault, they send this unit, and it's all female. But the first women that went to Iraq being deployed as combat soldiers, the commanders were not told that women were coming or that any women were coming, and they weren't set up for it. They didn't have separate latrines, they didn't have separate sleeping quarters, so all of a sudden women started to show up, and the commanders were like, where are you guys going to sleep? Where are you guys going to shower? I mean, it was even that unorganized. But you have to understand that the military doesn't change its own procedures. The military is, the procedures for the military is determined by Congress. So Congress gets together and they determine that things are going to be this way or they're going to change and now they're going to be this way. And then the military has to, to take that and they have to make those changes. They reluctantly make changes because they don't like change, because we've spent so many decades creating the greatest fighting force in the world. They really hate when somebody who's not in the military decides that it's going to be done a different way. So when Congress decided that women should be allowed to fight in combat, they never started from basic training. They just said it's okay now for women to fight in combat, and they sent them without any, without anything being done from the very beginning, to change the training at the beginning, to create the next generation of a co-ed fighting force. It never should have been done instantly with the fighting force that we have today. It should have been designed and set up to be integrated slowly so that the next generation of soldiers and Marines and Air Force would be co-ed fighting force that had trained together, they had been counseled together, they were respectful of each other, and then that sexual assault number would have dropped dramatically.
Yeah, the bureaucracy is always slow to change, and we're going to go to commercial break. And when we come back, I want to talk about the second documentary and why you decided to get into documentaries in the first place. And there's some of the things that I enjoy watching the most are real stories of life. And believe me, Women of War, if you check out this CD, is a true, real story of life. We're going to take a few minutes for a commercial break and be back with more of The Guy Dawson Show.